Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're diving into something deeply fascinating and honestly kind of surprising. What if I told you that some of your absolute best daily habits, the ones that earn you compliments at work or make you the super reliable one in your friend group, might actually be hiding a much deeper psychological wound? We're going to unpack the science and the psychology behind how our brains are literally brilliant at disguising survival tactics as everyday personality traits. Let me ask you something right off the bat. Are your best habits actually a trauma response? I want you to really think about how you view your own competence, your fierce independence, or even your easygoing nature. Are you truly just a naturally chill person who never ever needs a favor? Or is there a hidden mechanism at play here? By the end of this explainer, you might just view your own behavior in a completely different light. When we usually talk about trauma, we tend to focus on the loud stuff, the visible moments defined by what actually happened, the shouting, the obvious crises. But there's another kind of trauma that is far more silent and way harder to identify. It's called childhood emotional neglect, and it's defined entirely by what didn't happen. It is the invisible absence of care. So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, childhood emotional neglect, or CEN, is basically the empty space where a parent's curiosity, validation, and comfort should have been. Because it's an invisible wound, children who grow up in this environment usually don't even realize anything is wrong. Instead, they just adapt. They develop survival strategies to bridge a gap that was never meant to exist in the first place. And to the outside world, these strategies look exactly like normal, even highly desirable personality traits. Which brings us to Section 1, praised but painful habits. This is all about how our deepest survival tactics masquerade as competence. Let's start with a really big one. Ask yourself, do you absolutely flat out refuse to ask for help? Do you pride yourself on extreme hyper-independence? Maybe you're the person who figures out a ridiculously complicated software issue at work without ever calling IT, or you manage your own personal emotional breakdowns entirely alone, never once picking up the phone to call a friend. Now, society totally views this kind of independence as a badge of honor, right? It's seen as pure resilience. But the psychological reality tells a completely different story. If a child reaches out for help and consistently hits a brick wall of indifference or irritation, their brain performs a radical calculation. It learns that asking for help is a massive risk that only leads to rejection. So this isn't just self-sufficiency, it's a trauma response known as counterdependency. You simply deleted the ask for help button from your internal operating system just to stay safe. Think about this idea. If I don't need you, you can't hurt me by leaving or failing me. Man, that's heavy. But it perfectly captures why hyper-independence isn't actually a personality trait, it's a protective fortress. You're protecting yourself from the crushing disappointment of having a need go unmet. But the tragic cost of this fortress is that it leaves you feeling incredibly lonely inside, because true intimacy actually requires the risk of reliance. And that builds right into what psychologists call the service-based worth trap. You know the type. Maybe you're the therapist friend who's always fixing everyone else's life. In a neglectful childhood, you might have learned that the absolute only way to get a positive response was to be useful. Maybe you took care of siblings or emotionally supported an unstable parent. So now you give endlessly because your childhood taught you that receiving care is dangerous, and being useless makes you a burden. Another highly praised habit is seeming totally unbothered all the time. But actually, that can be a sign of alexithymia, which is literally the inability to identify or describe your own feelings. In a healthy childhood, parents act as emotional mirrors, but if your feelings were treated as an inconvenience, you had to mute your inner world just to survive. You disconnected the wires between your body sensations and your conscious mind. So when someone asks how you feel, your mind goes genuinely completely blank. All right, let's transition into Section 2, shrinking to survive. We're looking at the hidden heavy cost of being the easygoing one. We see these shrinking behaviors literally everywhere. The apology reflex, over-explaining your choices, the social chameleon effect, chronic indecisiveness, and extreme conflict avoidance. These are incredibly relatable habits for so many of us. But they all stem from a single, heartbreaking lesson learned early on. The safest way to exist in your environment is just to be small and agreeable. Let's break a few of these down. Have you ever caught yourself giving a 3-minute backstory for being like 5 minutes late? Or intensely justifying why you bought a specific brand of bread? This is over-explaining. You are preemptively defending yourself against a neglectful ghost from your past. You learned that just having a simple preference required building an irrefutable logical case just to avoid being dismissed or criticized. Then there's chronic indecisiveness, and this is driven by something called gaslighting by omission. This happens when a child's reality is just consistently ignored. If you said, "I'm sad," and your parent just ignored it, your internal compass broke. You stopped trusting your own perception. So now, when someone simply asks what you want for dinner, it's agonizing. You buried your preferences so deep to stay safe that you literally can no longer find them. And what about the social chameleon effect? On the surface, adapting your personality to match whoever you're with looks like incredibly high emotional intelligence. You're just great with people, right? Well, the hidden reality is hypervigilance. Lacking a stable emotional baseline at home, you became an absolute expert at reading the room to ensure your own safety. You became a highly anxious mirror instead of developing a solid core identity of your own. Which brings us right to extreme conflict avoidance. Remember this: silence isn't peace. Silence is abandonment. In a neglectful home, any ripple in the water could mean losing whatever tiny crumbs of affection were actually available. So you swallow your anger and become a people pleaser. And it's not because you love making everyone happy, but because you are absolutely terrified of the silence that follows a conflict. And perhaps the most subtle but honestly most painful shrinking behavior is the apology reflex. You know, when you apologize because someone else bumped into you at the grocery store, or you apologize just for asking a clarifying question, this is a sign of deep existential guilt. It's a preemptive strike. You're apologizing for your mere existence and for simply taking up space, basically shrinking yourself so no one else gets the chance to tell you that you don't belong. Okay, section 3, taking off the armor. This is where we shift gears from diagnosis to healing. If you recognized yourself in any of these habits today, I want to empathetically validate right now that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. Your brain did exactly what it needed to do to keep you safe. But here's the thing. The environment has changed. You are no longer that helpless child. The emotional armor and survival gear that literally saved your life is now just becoming too heavy. It's chafing. And more importantly, it's preventing you from experiencing the very love, connection, and intimacy you crave as an adult. Because healing isn't about fixing some broken version of yourself. It's really about repairing the parts of yourself that were left behind in childhood. And that starts with small, almost invisible steps. Step 1, just wait 5 seconds before apologizing when you haven't actually done anything wrong. Step 2, state a clear preference. Say, "I'd prefer Italian," instead of, "Oh, I don't care." And step 3, let someone help you carry a physical load or an emotional one, even if you know you could do it yourself. I want to leave you with a massive emotional anchor here. The people who actually belong in your life won't see your needs as a burden. They will see them as an opportunity to love you. You are never too much, and you are never not enough. You are simply a child who deeply deserved to be noticed. And honestly, it's time you started noticing yourself. Which leaves us with one final profound question for you to ponder today. Your armor got you this far, it honestly saved you, but are you finally ready to take it off and truly be seen? I really hope this explainer empowered you to understand the brilliant ways your mind protected you and inspired you to explore your own path toward healing. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next explainer.